We will bring this meeting to order. Mr. Hooper, would you lead us in the pledge? We do have a quorum. As you can see, we do have two of the members on virtual this evening. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes.
Or Dr. Taylor? Yes. Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Pollard?
Yes.
Mr. Scully?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, that will bring us to recognitions.
All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight we have with us our track and field from Green Valley High School. So I'm going to turn it over to Coach Stone to recognize our track and field state qualifying students.
All right, first of all, thank you for recognizing us tonight and the accomplishments of the student athletes that we have on our track and field team. First, I want to recognize our academic all-state student athletes. We had 26 total academic all-state athletes on our track and field team on the boys and girls side. To get that distinction, you need to have at least a 3.6 non-weighted GPA and or a 25 or higher on the ACT. So I'm really proud of that group this year. You know, we pushed not just the athletic side, but being a student athlete, being well-rounded. So to have 26 on the team is pretty special. Of those 26, I think we have three up here with us. Landon Barnes, Tyler Melton, and Izzy Salzman were three of those 26. Unfortunately, a lot of our state qualifiers were not able to make it tonight, just with a lot being out of town, summer and stuff. We had 12, I believe, total state qualifiers. I do want to take a second or a minute to recognize all of our state qualifiers, even if they weren't able to make it tonight. Our first one is here, Landon Barnes. He was a qualifier in the 4x800 meter relay that finished 12th at state with a time of 8:01.67. That was a really tough event this year. A lot of great 4x800 teams, especially in Class 5. They just kept improving throughout the season and did a great job at districts to move on to sectionals and then in sectionals and state. Our next one couldn't be here, Styles Blackman. He finished third. He was all-state in the shot put with a throw of 16.97 meters. He broke the school record several times throughout the season and finished with a great mark at state. Also, the 4x8, going back to the 4x8, the 4x800 broke the record twice, I believe, at districts and sectionals. Is that right? So had a good postseason run there with a 4x8. Alyssa Carver couldn't be here tonight. She is one of our pole vaulters. She finished all-state with a 7th in-state performance of 3.34 meters. She also broke her own school record several times this year. Daniel Dent was another member of our 4x800 team. He couldn't be here tonight. Megan Prestia is with us tonight. She is one of our two great pole vaulters that we have on the team. She was a state qualifier and finished 11th in state with a vault of 3.19 meters. Bladen Pruitt could not be here tonight. He broke his own school record several times this year in the javelin and was our highest state finisher with a second place finish. Broke his own school record several times throughout the year. Finished with a throw of 55.84 meters. Then next we have McKenna Sears. She could not be here tonight. She was a javelin state qualifier and finished all state with a fourth place finish with a 42.47 meters throw. She also broke her own school record several times this year. Izzy Salzman is with us tonight. She was a state qualifier in the high jump and finished fourth for an all-state finish of 1.62 meters was her jump. Rylan Smith, who is with us, is also a member of our 4x800 team that finished 12th at state. Then Isabella West was a state qualifier in the triple jump. She could not be here tonight. She is a two-time state qualifier. She finished all-state last year. Didn't quite finish all-state this year, but still a state qualifier. Finished 13th with a jump of 10.77 meters. And then for the second year in a row, we have a para-athlete. He was able to make it last year with us, but didn't make it tonight. He competed in the shot put, the discus, and the 100-meter dash. His finishes, he finished all-state in all three. First in shot put, second in the 100, and first in discus. So it's great to have him as part of our team the last 2 years as well. So I believe I recognize everybody right up here, right? If we can just give them one round of applause for a great season this year. And then Coach Shepard, one of our other coaches as well, does a great job. He coaches high jump and horizontal jumps as well. Does a great job with our jumpers. Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody.
All right. If you all want to go ahead and take off, now would be a good time to do that. You're welcome to stay if you want. Thank you. All right. That will move us to unfinished business. We'll start with the 24-25 budget.
Thank you. We're really pleased to present the budget to you tonight. This is for the upcoming school year, the 24-25 school year. Our goal with the budget is to address the priorities of our school district strategic plan and to adequately provide for the needs of the district, also with an eye on sustainability into the future. The budget proposal reflects what we know at this time. The state legislature has passed a budget for 24-25 that fully funds the state school funding formula, including an increase to the state adequacy target to $6,760. This is the first time in several years that there has been an increase to the SAT, so we're pleased with that. The state legislature has committed to fully funding transportation at 75% reimbursement for the third consecutive year. This budget includes local funding based on a net levy increase of 25 cents that was approved by our voters here in Grain Valley in April, and it's also based on the 2023 property assessments. With the passage of our levy ballot measure in April, pay increases will occur in 24-25 for all of our team members based on comparisons to similar roles in the Kansas City Metro. Our CSIP 2026 priorities are to maintain class sizes within district standards, address the increasing cost of meeting the academic and behavioral needs of students, and provide competitive pay for team members. All of these things are also priorities with our budget work. Although there's always something going on with the budget throughout year-round, it really begins in earnest in January when we start to prioritize the requests that we have from administration and departments that come in October. And we'll work through that with the board throughout the spring with updates on projected revenues and expenditures throughout the spring. And this is the culminating night. This is our presentation of our full budget as we know it today. And in the between tonight and 3 weeks from now, when the board will have this as an action item, We will also put out a video to our community kind of promoting a similar presentation to what we're doing tonight and give our community an opportunity to react. Want to highlight a few of the numbers in Grain Valley by the numbers. Our free and reduced lunch count is 23% at the present time. That's pretty typical. It is down from a one-year high last year of 27%, but it's kind of back in line with where we have been seeing that in recent years. And we are at 23%. We're considered a relatively low poverty school district. I also want to point out in the instructional programs in the lower right-hand corner that 14% of our students, grades K through 12, are on individual education plans for special education, and that is up from 13.2% a year ago. We pay close attention to K-12 student enrollment, and we have been trending pretty flat over the last 5 or 6 years. This most recent school year was no exception. In fact, we were down 75 students, which is really the first time that we've seen a significant decline in enrollment in more than 30 years. So is that a new trend? Not yet. I personally think we'll continue to remain flat for the next few years, but there certainly as a community is more room for growth. We've also we're engaging with a demographer for a demography study in 2024, and that should give us more insights on what to predict about this bar graph moving forward. Wanted to present some data just comparing ourselves to some of our neighboring districts. So Lee Summit, Blue Springs, Independence, we like to compare our numbers to them, not because they're districts like ours, but because they are our large neighbors. When we gain students or lose students, often it's to one of these 3 districts, and we also, of course, compete with them for teachers and staff as well. The other 4 districts in our metro that are more similar to us, at least in scope of student enrollment, are also included here: Belton, Fort Osage, Platte County, and Kearney. And the one column that I'll draw your attention to is the tax levy for 2023 was $4.4882, and that was the lowest in the area. Now, with the passage of our ballot measure in April, we should still be fairly low by comparison in the metro, but we are not expected to be the lowest with the increase in our levy. Average class size. We also, with the same districts, will compare our student-teacher ratios, average class size, and our students per administration. And really, keeping an eye on all these numbers is just to make sure that we're not becoming an outlier among districts like us. So we're within the range of the neighbors in those areas. The next one I want to make sure that we take some time with, and this is the board's funding of medical, short and long-term disability, and life insurance for our full-time employees. Now, it is for all of those things, but the vast majority of the money that we allocate for benefits is for the medical side. So the blue bars across here represent how much we've devoted in a budget year over the last 5 years to our per employee allocation, which happens on a monthly basis, but throughout the year. So for the school year closing, we are estimating that we will have spent $4.4 million for medical benefits based on the $7,800 per employee per year. The $1.9 million in orange that you see at the top of that bar, that is the amount we made in overage payments so far for 23-24 in order to cover our medical expenses. We are self-insured, which means, and we are part of a pool, there's a few other school districts in the metro that we're in a pool with, but being self-insured, it means we have to make good on all of our own medical claims. And there are risks associated with that, and those risks were realized in the school year that was just ending with $4.4 million in anticipated monthly payments overall, and then $1.9 million in overage payments. We had budgeted $628,000 in overage payments, so we went over that by about $1.3 million. Now, for the year ahead, we're making 2 significant changes. First of all, we're increasing from $7,800 per employee to $9,060 per employee, the board's contribution towards each employee's medical benefits. And you can see that that raises how much we're contributing to medical right off the top at just under $5 million. And then we're also increased from $628,000 in overage payments to now we have a budget in the upcoming year of $800,000 in overage payments. Now, what happens if we get into another situation and we have $1.9 million in overage payments? Well, if it looks like instead of a one year, you know, I don't know how many hips we replaced, but if we just say this is the year of the hip, you know, if that happens again, I mean, everybody's got two hips, I guess. But if we see another year like that and we're like, okay, moving forward, we can't continue to assume the risk at that level. Another option would be is that we could employ stop loss, an independent stop loss contract that lowers our stop loss. It's currently set at $300,000. But if we felt like we needed to do something different, we can look back at the cases. You know, if we had had that stop loss at 200 rather than 300, what would that have done to our overage payments over the past 2 years? And if we find that it actually would have been financially feasible for us to pay a higher premium for a lower stop loss, then maybe that pays out. After having just 1 year with $1.9 million in overage payments, we feel like it's a concern, but we don't want to overreact to it either. So this is probably one of the big changes, you know, that's happening to us. And of course, the board already knew that medical benefit payments for the current year were a big deal. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of pause and just see if there are any questions from the board on either on medical or maybe anything in the presentation up until this point before I carry on to the rest of the presentation. And we can come back to it too. Okay, let's look at some fixed costs. Some of the things that are fixed costs for us that we like to track from year to year are property and liability insurance, student transportation, and utilities. All of those are seeing projected increases for the year ahead. I want to highlight the largest one of those, which is student transportation. We're expected to spend about $1 million more in student transportation next year than we did this year. Now, $440,000 of that is salary and benefits. So it's not as big as it looks because we're increasing salary and benefits in all departments in all schools. But another $430,000 of the $1 million is for 4 new buses that we are purchasing. So between those two, that kind of brings that back, into a normal range for that. And then on the revenue side, on the next slide, the increase in the tax levy is expected to generate $3.5 million in new revenue. The state's Prop C sales tax should generate another $836,000. Our state adequacy target, we've already talked about, is increased for the first time in more than 5 years. That should generate another $1.6 million. And then this upcoming year will be the first year that we do not get pandemic provisions of the ESSER funds. So from a budgetary standpoint, that's a loss of $1 million. So we talked about these things before we even set the ballot measure language for the April election. We knew that ESSER was coming off the books, and we knew that the state was thinking about that they were going to be in a position to increase the SAT. And if you'll remember, one of our concerns was if the state doesn't make good on increasing the SAT and we pass the levy, then instead of spending $3 million in salary and benefits, we were going to have to figure out how to make up $800,000 to $1 million right off the top. But it looked, as we got into campaign mode in the spring on our information campaign, it looked less and less problematic for that. And so we felt really good that the increase, in our case, the increase in the SAT from the state is more than offsetting the federal money that we are going down for the upcoming year. So that our tax levy, the point is that the new money generated from locally, from our local tax levy, is staying local for just what we said it was going to be, at least $3 million into improved pay for our people. Then on the expenditure side, the big changes to expenditures, increased base salary and a step increase for all of our team members of $3 million. Increase in board insurance contribution of $1,260 per staff member, up to that $9,060 that we showed on the bar graph. So that totals $756,000. We also have increases in special education expenses in the upcoming year to the tune of $206,000, mostly for tuition and contracted services for students with some of the more severe special needs. And then we've already talked about increase in health insurance overage payments from $628,000 in the budget. We're adding $200,000, bring that up to $800,000 for overage budget. Recurring additions and deductions. The reason that we call these are new FTEs that we're adding for the upcoming school year, and they become recurring additions. So and there's 7 of them, and they totaled just about $450,000, and only 2 of these really are going to have a direct impact on class sizes. So I want to highlight that, because when we talk about this, the cost of providing for the education of our students is getting more expensive for the academic and behavioral needs. This highlights that, because we've added an English language learner teacher to help lower caseloads for the students that qualify for that program, but it takes care of that group of kids, but it doesn't lower anybody's class sizes anywhere. We have a special education teacher that we're adding for the upcoming year. Again, it's needed. That program is growing, doesn't change class sizes. And then we're really proud to be adding another parents as teachers educator. This is for birth to age 3, and they had a wait list this last school year that was the equivalent of another whole educator. So we're really pleased to hopefully be able to wipe out that wait list. And then, of course, we've also added a high school custodian to keep clean the square footage that we're adding up there. And we're also pleased to be adding our 4th school resource officer. So those are the commitments that we've made at this point for the upcoming school year. Kind of a summary of changes to our operating budget. Our total expenditures in this budget is $62,683, or $683,856. And then that represents a deficit budget today of $99,872. Now, we're not too worried about showing that deficit right now, because one of the numbers that's zeroed out is we have not accounted for any property tax revenue off of new construction. So far, 2024 is very much a down year for us for new construction permits, but we do feel confident that when the property tax numbers come in for new construction, that we should be able to zero out pretty close that $99,000. 2 other quick things on this slide I want to highlight, and that is on the revenue side. We break that down: federal, state, local, and then a little bit of county. Federal is at 4% for the upcoming school year, down from 6%. That's the loss of the $1 million of ESSER money. State drops from 49% to 46%. Local increases from 44% to 48% with the passage of our levy. And county increases from 1% to 2%, which is a nominal change. And on the expenditure side, we're always, for a district our size, we're always trying to target the 80% of our expenses in salaries and benefits. That way, that kind of helps ensure that we're keeping supply and services in check relative to the overall budget. So again, we're at 80%, 60% salaries plus 20% for our benefits. I want to break down our federal revenues so you can see the different ways that the federal money comes in. We don't get a lot of federal revenues, and of course the $2.3 million that we're showing is down from $3 million a year ago, and now this represents 4% of our overall revenues. So what does this operating budget pay for? Well, the 4 big chunks are elementary instruction, middle school instruction, high school instruction, and then special programs such as special education, vocational, summer school, gifted, title, library, and alternative education. But you can see the breakdown of all the other categories as well. Now, for the budget year ending 23-24, we are projecting that we are going to have a fund balance of 24.94%. That's right where we want to see it. Anything below 24%, we start to run the risk that we're going to have a difficult time have fully funding our pay, well, not that we wouldn't fund payroll, but having a more difficult time making payroll in November and December. So our threshold is 24%, and we expect to end at 24.94%. That is with a full 7% transfer plus transportation transfer that's allowed in Missouri of $2.4 million from Fund 10 to Fund 20 to cover capital improvement expenses. And then for the year ahead, 24-25, if we project this out a year from now and we make the same 7% transportation transfer, then our fund balance in reserves would be 22.82%, which is below the 24%. But at this point, we're not worried about that, because if it actually came to that, then we would lessen our transfer and make sure we stayed north of the 24%. On our debt service fund, I want to draw your attention to the right half, which is the budget of the year looking ahead. At the top there where it says total revenues, $8.2 million, this is the amount of revenues that will be generated with our debt service levy that this year will be lowered from $1.70, which is what we've been keeping, down to $1.30 as we told our community with the passage of the bond, of the levy issue in April. So we'll generate $8.2 million in the year ahead for debt service. We will pay out $12.5 million. So yes, we are paying out a deficit amount for the upcoming school year, but the ending balance in that account will still be $8.8 million, which will more than cover the whole next year's debt service. And that's where we want to stay, that our reserve is just big enough that we make sure that we're cover our next year's obligations. So we're going to be in good shape there. Part of the $12.5 million in expenditures is that the 2009 bonds come due for a payoff. So we'll take those off the books in the course of the next school year. Challenges ahead, we need to continue to keep an eye on competitive pay, and we will track probably in October, November timeframe, as we have been year over year, to see how competitive we actually end up for the year. We also face, of course, increasing health benefit costs. And then there's the potential shifting in the school funding burden from the state to the local effort. And there's lots of different ways this could happen, and I don't want to be doom and gloom on this, but as we hear proposed legislation with any new state legislative cycle, we want to keep an eye on the commitments. Senate Bill 727 is law now, and there's a lot of great things in there for public education. There's a lot of great promises for teacher pay moving forward, but what it doesn't have is it doesn't contain guarantees for funding for those things. So we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye that the state continues to make good on fully reimbursing us for transportation. Also, the increased state adequacy target for the year ahead is only half of what is coming, and we just want to make sure the state makes good on the other half, because if they don't, that's going to present some challenges to us. This year, the state made law the expansion of educational saving account vouchers, and they've also expanded charter schools into at least one more county. So those programs get funded off the top, and those are revenues that are shared. And the state, they reassure us, the legislature reassures us that they want to both pay our teachers more, and they want to expand vouchers and charter schools. But we just want to keep an eye on, that we actually make good on that. And then open enrollment is not the law of the land, but that gets talked about every year. So we just want to keep an eye on open enrollment and the potential financial implications for that. There's also the risk of reduction of personal or real property taxes. Every state has to decide how they're going to fund schools, and in Missouri, schools are funded quite a bit with property taxes. So if we eliminate or we minimize property taxes, then we just want to watch for ways that the legislature is also looking maybe to make that up in other forms of taxes. And then, of course, just today, and I have not seen an update, but just today they went to court, the legal challenge in Jackson County over their 2023 property assessment process. And that, depending on how that pans out, that could be a real threat to our budget as well. So again, I hate to end doom and gloom, but the reality is we are actually in a good place, and we feel like this budget does a lot of great things for us for the upcoming school year, and we would certainly open it up to any questions. And we are joined by Director of Finance, Mr. Aaron Hooper, who's with us tonight, because we know you guys are going to ask tough questions, and Dr. Gooch and I sometimes we look at each other and go, wow, that's a good question. So, Mr. Hooper, we're going to do our best to answer what we can for you tonight, any questions that you have.
All right. Anybody have any questions?
I have a few.
For it.
My first question is, are we going to go through the second document next? Because I'll reserve some of my questions for that, or we're not going to walk through that?
We
It's
can
a big document. so
It's a
we don't-
big document. It wasn't
Yeah.
going to be part of the presentation, but if
Okay.
you want to reference it, we
I
can.
may need to reference that.
Yeah.
So these aren't really questions. My first comment would be directed to Dr. Welly and Mr. President. I would really appreciate it, and maybe you, Dr. Gooch, if we could potentially invite our broker in or a representative from the medical carrier that could walk us through utilization, cost, some of those very specific things within I just think we as a board need to better understand not only utilization, but how the plan works. Because I think unfortunately, we're going to be in a position here pretty quickly where we're going to have to make some tweaks to that plan. And I want to make sure that we understand it before we start those discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic soon for us, so that by next winter and into the spring, we know what we want to do and how we want to do it. So I think that's a really good idea.
Second, you've got a slide here that says challenges ahead. It's second to last slide. I think these are all very important points, and I would really appreciate it if we could just get a real quick readout on these on a regular basis. I don't know if it has to be every meeting, but you've listed out all of the risks that we really need to be concerned about when it comes to the budget, and I would love it if we could just get, if the board's agreeable to it, an update, quick update on these regularly.
That's great.
Okay. Then moving to the other document, the detailed budget. Most of this I don't have any insight into how much we're spending in various areas, but towards the bottom, there were a few, and it was listed as Board of Education. So that's how it caught my eye. I need to find it again real quick here. I don't know if there's, is that, okay, thank you. Probably. Okay, there were a few here that just caught my eye. There was one that's $20,000 for materials and supplies listed to the Board of Education. I was curious what that was. Not every little thing, but more specifically. There was another on here. Oh yeah, there it is. $30,000 for election expenses. I was curious if we were having any elections. Yeah, I know we're going to have obviously a board election.
That's what it is.
Is that really $30,000?
It depends on how many other entities we're sharing the ballot with.
Okay.
If we're ever the only thing on the ballot, I do think it's a pretty pricey expenditure. Do you guys know what our recent elections cost?
It caught my eye because I had 5,000 in my head for some reason, and that may be wrong. That's
Yeah, I do know that it is in the tens of thousands of dollars that we pay when we have an election.
okay. So those two items, and then there was another one here, advertising. I don't see it right now, but it was there. It is advertisement 2,000. What is that tied to? Elections or campaigns, or what is, not personal campaigns, but what exactly is that? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm not that, if you need,
No, that's
if
part of
we
the,
need to come back, that's okay.
that's part of the
It's not-
deal. And the other, I mean, we want to answer tonight what we can, and what we can't answer tonight, we can answer in the next day or two, to make sure that you have it, before next time.
I know I'm calling in from St. Louis, but do you want us to just email on questions about that particular document based on the previous document that had the budget questions? Do you want us to just email that? Or do you want to talk about it now?
We can talk about it now. Yeah, we can hear you real well, so any questions that you have?
I'm sorry if I'm too loud.
No, you're great.
What Jared was talking about, so there's health insurance, it's twice on there for $400,000. Just curious as to why is it a duplicate, or is it, I just was asking.
I think in looking at this, I do think that that was a duplicate because I was pulling it. It doesn't change the numbers at the top, but I was pulling it from different sources to get the giant list. So I think it's just a duplicate on this list, but it is not duplicated in the numbers that we've been showing for expenditures and stuff.
And Mr. Hooper, would that be the budget for the overage payments?
Yes, that's what those are. There's 400,000 is in Fund 10, and then the other 400,000 is in Fund 20. So that's the 800,000 total. But I do believe that, like I said, when I built this long document, that was on two different places, and I do think that it is a duplicate. So it just needs to be removed from this.
So we want to make sure that we circle back on materials and supplies, elections, and advertisement.
So right now, for this year, we've only spent like $114 for advertisement. So I can just tell you some of these numbers are just, we kind of keep them in year over year as kind of placeholders from when we do things that just come up. And we may have these things line itemed on here, but if, say, materials and supplies, that's at 20,000, because I mean, there's a lot less, but sometimes all of the board meals and things like that come out of those things, and that's not $20,000, don't get me wrong, but those things come out of there. But if something comes up and one goes over, then that's what that, in our mind, that's what that $2,000 that is kind of covering that on there.
And we can circle back with a more detailed account of how that money has been spent in the past, and then that'll help the board understand why we hold those numbers moving forward.
All right. Jared, anything else on that?
No, I think that's all.
Right.
Thank you.
And just so you know, this year's the election was $15,000. That's how much we charged this, or how much we spent this current year on the election was $15,000.
Okay.
So.
All right. Any other members have any questions?
Come on. Yep. So I know that we may not know this yet. I know that part of the plan with the tax levy was to get in range as far as our salaries and things. And we may not know exactly where that's going to fall yet, but do we feel like with our increases, we're going to be close to where we want to be on that?
Yeah, I think we feel really good about it at this point. Now, all the districts we compete with are having these very same conversations at the same time. So, like on the teacher side, for example, we kind of shot for 5th through 8th ranking in the metro, knowing that everybody else is going to move a little bit, and maybe we end up 7th through 10th. But we'll know that in the fall, and we'll circle back and do a full reporting to the board using the same kind of tool, and we'll be able to see year over year how we rank. But the staff has been really pleased with the raises, so they know what raises are coming. So as far as how it impacts each teacher, they're really thrilled that the community rallied behind what the board put on the ballot measures. So it's a win for us to be given raises that
Yeah.
we're given.
So regardless of where we rank, this is a step in a good direction
Yeah,
for us.
it
as a
really
district.
is. And and I, just the other day, I was kind of characterizing for somebody what the shift it represents for us. Traditionally, we've been very competitive with districts between here and looking to Warrensburg. So in looking to the east, we've been very competitive, but that's not who we compete with for teachers. We compete with a KC Metro for teachers, for people who are maybe going to come and move to the area. This puts us squarely in the Kansas City Metro, and that's what this bump did. So whether we're able to hold on to our 5th place or our 6th place, that's always going to be at risk. But we're playing ball with the Kansas City Metro now.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. We will, if we have any other questions about it, we'll get those emailed out and then we'll come back to them.
Yeah, and we'll circle back on those other numbers just to make sure that the board's satisfied with all that.
All right. That will take us to unfinished business. The second item, safety priority plan. Bring this back for additional discussion from May when we ran out of time.
Very good. I'm going to turn this one over to Dr. Gooch, kind of walk us through what we're looking at here.
Thank you. If you guys can remember back to when we gave kind of the snapshot of the security audit that we had, there was a list of all of the items that were the largest priorities for us to address. And so what we've done is, you can see in the gray headings there, that's, that would be the first one, and the second one, and the third one on the next page. But this kind of breaks down those things specifically, if it's currently in place, and what a potential timeline would be, and then what funding source would be used to purchase, install, whatever the list item is on the left-hand side, if we knew, if I know the cost at this time. And then you can see the additional information there. And then, of course, we just recolored it there, with green being things that are currently in place, yellow being things that are currently being evaluated or have had initial discussions with some various vendors. And then right now, red is something that we have not had any planning or discussions with anybody yet, but I will stress yet. So this is just kind of more of a, what the specific safety item that was identified from the audit, and kind of where our timeline and funding stuff comes from, and some additional information. So I'll take specific questions regarding these if you have them.
So on the items that we don't have any costing to yet, what are those in process? Are they just?
They're either things that we already have in place, or they are items that will not cost anything. It's just more procedurally and putting things in place. I'll go through to a specific example. The district crisis communication. We are evaluating our crisis communication. We're gonna over the next year, we're gonna work towards developing and bringing our emergency operations plan, bringing that into the one that is sponsored by the Missouri School Boards Association, and updating it with new information. Well, for us just to sit down as a group and gather information from the state, that doesn't cost anything other than just people sitting around a table and really looking at the new resources and taking our information and uploading it to the new app and database from the state of Missouri. So really it's just man hours, and so I didn't put any specific cost to that. But Dr. Willie?
Yeah, there's 2 items on here listed to be determined in the cost column.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard, because you've told me kind of a ballpark So you're working on those numbers now. You should have those maybe even by the end of the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go speak specifically to those two. For example, window film as the first one that says to be determined. We have window film on the vestibules and the entries of our schools, but we are evaluating what we have and what the cost would be to, to add or improve. So I have been in discussions at length with companies about that. The other one that says to be determined is labeling our doors and windows. And there's been basically the reason why that says to be determined is there are some new guidelines that are put out by the state of Missouri that specifically talk about the sizing of letters in proximity to the road that is closest to the windows or doors. And so depending on that, we have to, and we don't want to purchase lettering or numbering for doors that if this, if they fully make us or have a requirement for us to have letters and numbers that are specific sizes or have reflective coating on it so it can be seen with, at night, just various things like that. So I'm working with Mr. Getz on that to determine, if what the new requirements and policies are that are coming to us from the state, and then kind of evaluating that process. Because again, originally I had an approximate number to a dollar amount to add just regular stickers, large decals to all of our doors and windows. However, with some recent changes, I had to remove an approximate there and go ahead and go with to be determined, just because I don't know that yet now with any of the new information coming to us from the state.
So something else that had been brought up previously that may or may not have anything to do with this specific plan, but I think it might, is that additional audit for the alternative school.
Mm-hmm.
Have we received that
I
back?
have not received that from the Center for Safe Schools yet.
When was the last time we followed up on that?
They came and did the physical evaluation at the beginning of, I would say, right the second week of May. And so the individual from SlideSoft, Zach, did come. He did the evaluation. He wrote up his recommendations and findings, and then he sends it off to Center for Safe Schools. And so I have not received it from them yet, but the information has been sent to them. So I would expect that at any time.
Okay.
And when I do have that information from them, that information will be added to this if there are specific things that need to be addressed.
All right. Any other members have questions?
We're adding an SRO for 2024, but were we down an SRO at the end of the year, or were we where we needed to be?
No, we were not. We were transitioning one of the district's SROs to a new hire that was brought on. So we actually for almost the last month and a half, we had because of the on-site training, we actually were up one at the time. So no, we weren't down one.
So are we still having to hire one or go through the process of hiring?
Yes.
Does that happen during the summer?
So they have I talked with the chief actually not too long, and Captain Palachek both not too long ago about this, and they have the posting up internally, and they actually believe that they have two candidates within the department that are both interested. And so that is the last information I have heard from him specifically about it, but he is actively working to hire that fourth one for us.
And so the chief handles that.
He goes through kind of the initial. He posts it within the police department, and then when he has a final candidate or a final two candidates, then he will engage me, and I will sit down with him, the Captain Palachek, and we will interview the individual.
So we don't feel
and actually also utilize depending on. For example, in the past, we've also brought in some of the building administration if we know that it's specific to like the high school, for example. So
But we feel confident that we'll have 4 when we start school.
I would say that I feel confident that we will have the position hired. It just depends on if the individual has has already been SRO certified and has done all of that. There might still be some stuff that they have to go through, because if it's an individual who hasn't been through SRO training or who hasn't done some CEPTED stuff or things like that, then there'll be specialized training that they have to go do in order to actually be the SRO, like DARE, stuff like that. However, I'm pretty confident that they will have identified the 4th one, and that person will have started going through the process so they can start with us as soon as possible.
Sure. Since we've got the summer to be able to
Correct.
handle
Yeah.
some of that. So.
Yeah. And it was good for me to hear that they had some interest in that position as well. So that makes me feel confident that we will have identified the person. Just how quickly can they get this person to all the specialized training and get the certification
Will they be
done?
able to start before that, or do they have to wait until they get all that done?
They'll have to wait until that happens. It can take a few months. So I'm going to be optimistic and say, well, I believe we would have the individual hopefully in the fall. I'm not 100% convinced it's going to be right at the start, but close. Okay. I'll keep you updated as that progresses too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, to that point, how much input does the district have in that individual to make sure that they're a fit for us?
A lot. If there's a concern, or if there's any reasoning that I or anybody else in the administration team who is involved in that process feels like that person won't be a fit, then I have and can have that discussion with both Chief Turner and Captain Palachek and just let them know we don't feel like that is the fit for this specific building or this particular job.
Is that something? I'm just trying to figure out the process. If they put the app, or if they have an applicant and it's only one applicant, are we involved in that hiring process, or do they hire that individual and then tell us, here's your SRO?
No, so in a previous position, one of our previous school resource officers, there was one applicant, and I still was able to interview the individual and give my approval of whether or not I felt like that individual was going to be a fit for our district or not, and also included the building administration at that particular time. So even if there is only one, no, we still have the authority to say no.
Anyone else? All right.
Thank you.
Do we need to set a date or something to bring this back? Or
We can bring it, we can bring it back from our standpoint, anytime there's changes, or from your standpoint, anytime you haven't heard from us in a while. But I imagine, at least at first, every other month there's going to be a lot of change.
And I would just like to add, as soon as the Sni Valley Academy information is given to me, if there was any update at all to this document, I will absolutely want to put that back in front of you.
We'll also just share that full report, since
100%.
board saw everything
Absolutely.
else.
I'll add it to the folder that all of you already have access to, and you'll have all the information.
thank you.
Mhm.
All right. That will take us to new business. We need to amend the district calendar for 24-25. We want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the board had already approved the calendar for the upcoming school year with 168 student days included. With the passage of Senate Bill 727 this spring, one of the provisions that they have was an incentive for school districts to maintain 5-day school weeks. So for school districts a year from now who are finishing a year with 169 student contact days, which is one more than what was in our calendar, we would be eligible to receive another 1% state allocation, which in our case is roughly $220,000. Now, that revenue has to go directly towards improved pay for our teachers, but we've already communicated out the 168-day student calendar, and so we were we got the news with a little bit of school left, and so we did put some feelers out to the staff. We had kind of made an assumption that our teachers would rather give up the Monday after Easter than to give up the last day after students leave in May. And we were wrong. So again, just the feelers that we put out, it was pretty overwhelming that the preference was just if we can do an early release on that last Friday in May before Memorial Day weekend, and teachers did not have to come back after Memorial Day weekend, then we'd be fine. And so that's what we're recommending for this revision. And then as we get into calendar generating season, usually is January, then we will look at if there's any other reimagining that needs to happen for the following year's calendar. But with this one, with the calendar already have been communicated out and people already planning their years ahead, unless there's something dramatically different that we need to go back to the drawing board on this one, wouldn't mind this being an action item if it pleases the board tonight. That way we can kind of correct the record with all of our families and staff as soon as possible. But again, if it needs to wait until the end of June, we can roll with that too.
All right. We'll go ahead and call for a motion to approve the district calendar, and then we'll have discussion. Do I have a motion to approve the amended 2024-2025 district calendar as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right. I do have a question about the $220,000. So is that in your current budget that you're showing?
It's a good question.
Sorry, no, that is not show, we do not get paid that out until the 25-26 school year. So you have to have the number of days next year and you'll get paid out for it the following
It
year.
would be a revenue in
Yes.
the following school year.
So with that, I want to point out, because that's a very important point, you're rewarded for days that you actually had school. So with a 169 student contact calendar, if we ever had a snow day, or we had a water main break, or we had any kind of cancellation where students didn't spend 1 minute at school, we would have to make up that day or declare an AMI day. Unlike the year we just came off where Grain Valley was kind of the area hero because we had traditional old school snow days that, were not AMI days. Everything would have to be an AMI day, or we would have to physically use one of our built-in snow days. We don't have any that you lose it and it's just gone and it's okay, which honestly, we have what we feel like is a really good AMI plan. It's not rigorous. On even the most beautiful blizzardy day that kids want to be outside playing in the snow, we're not expecting an awful lot of them for us to get credit for the AMI day, and they can still go out and have a fantastic day in the snow. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the calendar?
No, I always have liked the use of AMI days, because my kiddo's in elementary school and it wasn't. I mean, I felt like it was appropriate with the time spent, so I think that's a good trade-off.
Thank you.
So it's based on hours, however, right? Not days.
There's two things. For this, it needs to be 169 days. So there has to be 169 days that kids are physically at school, but it's not 169 7.5-hour days. It's just there has to be 169 days that we had school and somebody was there a minute. So it doesn't change how schools are funded from the state, except if we have kids in school for 169 days, we're eligible for an additional 1%, but it doesn't change the funding formula for the.
So the hours, as far as how many hours kids are in school and stuff like, there's plenty of that built in.
There's plenty of that built in, yes.
Gotcha.
The reasoning that the state is putting this out there, correct me if I'm incorrect, is to push school districts to go to 5-day school weeks.
Yes, it's rewarding 5-day school weeks. And somebody sat down and figured out that if you were going to do 5 days a week, you know, more often than not, that added up to 169 student contact days. And we're lucky that we were just off by one, because we have some neighbors that are off by 3 to 6, and that's a little trickier to find 3 to 6 days in the calendar. And at that point, they have to evaluate if that's worth it. Is it more expensive for them to be open another week than what the state is going to be reimbursing, or, you know, the following year? So I don't know what the neighbors will do, but some of them might just leave it alone.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we will vote. Ms. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. English,
Yes.
Dr. Taylor, Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Pollard,
Yes.
Mr. Scully,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you. That will move us to the community engagement plan for 24-25.
Not an action item tonight, but we want to put this in front of you again. This was first developed a year ago, so we're just coming off our first year. Had a very successful first year. We promoted the bulk of our community engagement plan is the promotion of these 5 district committees, and 4 of them met during the year and were very productive. The 5th one has started meeting in earnest this spring, and that was the Facilities Planning Committee. And the Facilities Planning Committee, we made the decision in the fall that we were going to delay some action by them so that we didn't want there to be confusion with all the bond issues we've passed over the years. We didn't want there to be confusion this spring that our levy ballot measure was another bond issue. And so that committee is going now. But we have promoted the committees, and for our families and our community members to sign up for that, and we're also going to circle back with people that served this last year, keep them for another year at least, and then invite in any new folks that are interested. So we had a kind of a year-end campaign. We're going to pick it up again this summer when we promote our returning student registration and our new student enrollment, and we think we'll get even more interest. So we're hoping to kind of beef up these committees a little bit more for the upcoming school year.
All right.
I have a question on that. So we should have a board representative on each of those committees, is that correct or
Yes,
ideal?
that would be ideal, yes.
And then, I don't know, I feel like last year when we signed up, it was a specific form to us. I haven't seen that. Should we just sign up through the community link, or what should we do?
Yeah, you're welcome to just use the same community link, and it'll have your name in there, and so we'll see who you are. But then we'll circle back, and I'll follow up with the board president, and we'll see which of you we've heard from and who we haven't, and then we'll fill in the gaps. So yes, do fill out the community survey as a board member, and if that doesn't work out for everybody, then we'll go to Plan B on that. That way, for the start of the new school year, everybody will know their committee assignments.
Yeah, and Dr. Welly and I have had some additional conversations. The goal is to keep the bulk of these committees together as much as possible for at least
Continuity,
2 to
yeah.
3 year periods, just so that you know, you can introduce new people just for when people do come off, but just so that there's not that learning curve over and over and over again.
Possibly as we get into year 2 on these committees, we just go ahead and with every committee member, we have the discussions within each of the committees. We'll just go ahead and, I don't know, give everybody a 3-year term. So, you know, if we get enough new members in each committee for the upcoming school year, we've already have offsetting membership. So we'll just kind of play that by ear and committee to committee. But I think that's a great call.
All right. Any other discussion or questions? That will take us to the meal prices for the 24-25 school year.
Yeah, you see that we are recommending increases to various aspects of meals, anywhere from, I think the lowest one is a nickel up to maybe a quarter. This is to offset the roughly 15% increase in costs that we were seeing this last year. So the projected estimate revenue from the changes doesn't doesn't offset 100% of the increase in prices that we're seeing, but our director is confident that they would still be in the black at the end of the next school year. So these are for your review. We can have any discussion, and then depending on how that goes, you will see this at your meeting in 3 weeks, quite possibly as a consent agenda item.
Just as a comment, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels this way, it still feels very odd that we can be in the black but be in the red on the same item at the same time. Just a comment.
It's weird.
All right, anybody have any additional comments about the meal prices? All right. That will move us to board policies. The first board policy up for discussion will be the policy BBD, board member removal from office.
This policy has kind of an unfortunate title. And the reason that we bring it to you is because it's been modified over the years to serve a couple different things, and we are recommending restoring it to its original intent. There's 2 paragraphs in this policy. The first paragraph is what MSBA intended based on statute, and it's really to protect the school district, that if an elected school board member basically abandons their post after the 3rd absence, then the board can declare or assume that position is open and can go ahead and fill it with a 7th member. That's the intent. Over the years, locally we crafted the second paragraph, and there's some provisions in there that are particularly problematic with the statute. For example, there's a comment in there that if you're there within the first hour, you're present, and that's actually contradictory to the statute language. So that if we wanted to keep that line, we'd have to tweak it anyway. My thinking on this, if we restore this language to its original intention, then as a practical matter, if we have a board member that for whatever their circumstances are, they're absent for a second regular meeting in a row, then I think we're having a conversation. You know, the board president's having a conversation with them, and if somebody is having an illness, there's something that's keeping them from being present, either in person or remotely, and we want to approve 1 or more of those absences to prevent 3 consecutive regular meetings, then we would list that as an action item, or as an action item in the agenda. Our practice, and as it's described in the policy, in the paragraph we're recommending that gets struck, the paragraph states that it'll go on consent agenda. Well, if any absence by a board member is just automatically dropped in consent agenda, it's going to always get approved, and then that negates the intent of the statute that led to this policy in the first place. So we kind of had a locally written paragraph that was problematic in how it looped this policy. So kind of open. This is not an urgent matter. This is just something that at some point we need to get cleaned up, and we just wanted to initiate it this month and open it up for any questions or discussion.
Are there any?
I have a few. Yeah, this policy, it's evolved a lot, and I don't mind it going back. I remember at one point when I was on the board, I was actually deployed for a year, and so we used this policy to maintain my seat while I was gone. My only concern here, if we revert back, would be to ensure that we define what a board meeting is, because we also have workshops, and I want to make sure, are those a board meeting or is that a workshop? I know Dr. Welling and I have discussed this a little bit, and I think that you had said if it's on what we approve at the beginning of the term,
Yeah.
then it would be considered a board meeting, which would include workshops.
Well, yeah, and I think by the wording of the policy, I mean, any regular meetings of the board. So that would include workshops and business meetings.
I'm okay with that. That's just inconsistent with the approach that was taken in the past. So if that's the way we're moving forward, I just want to make sure that we all are aware of that
And
and have discussed it.
I mean, I still think the wording gives a lot of latitude. I mean, it's, you know, unless excused by the board for reasons satisfactory to the board. So that could be a very, very long list of things,
Yes, it could.
deployment being one.
Right, right.
So.
So I support, I know we can't vote on it tonight, but I support reverting back as long as we all have the same understanding of what, I forgot the language.
Regular meetings of the board.
Regular meeting of the board, thank you.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? All right, we will bring this one back at the next meeting. That will take us to policy GCBDA, professional staff short-term leave. This one is changing the language for GCBDA and GDBDA.
Nice job. Yes, this has been an ongoing discussion. Our teacher representatives asked for this change. The board was enthusiastic to be able to make this happen for the teachers. So we have reworked both of these policies, one for professional staff, one for support staff, but it's to make the same change. It's to go from a sick leave, personal leave system to a system of paid time off and banked time off. And we have Director of Human Resources, Crystal Frederick, with us tonight to help us answer any questions. And one of the things that Mrs. Frederick did for us is she actually met with some groups on this once we had the policy language put together, and we put together the frequently asked questions, because people have questions. We know they will have questions. And we went ahead and included that in your board packet because I'm sure that it reflected some of the questions that you probably have as board members as well. So, but to be clear, the way the board implements this change to paid time off is through this policy, these two policies, and it's not an action item tonight. Our preference, though, would be that we list it as an action item in 3 weeks so that it can officially take effect with the start of contracts on July 1st.
For the discussion, is it easier to discuss each of these two separately because they probably have different things evolving around them?
They're very similar policies. The difference between the two is the number of days for professional days versus support staff.
Okay, well, we'll just talk about both of them at the same time and just differentiate if we need to. Does anybody have any questions about the policies? All right, well, that was easy. It looks like everything lines up the way that we thought it was going to. So good job.
Thank you, Mrs. Frederick.
Sorry you've had to sit here for all of this. All right. Well, we will bring that back in 3 weeks for a vote. All right, that will take us to policy EHBD, artificial intelligence use. This will be a brand new policy.
Yes, with the addition of artificial intelligence and the implications it has for teaching and learning, MSBA has come out with this recommended language. We took the recommended language administratively, and we already made one change. It's one of the front paragraphs there. It used to say students and employees may be disciplined. Now it reads students may be disciplined and employees may be disciplined up to and including termination for AI use that violates this policy or any related policy or procedure. So it's a new policy. We've already made a tweak to it, but we wanted to get it in front of all of you, and we would bring it back next time. This is one of those, if this one got approved in June, it would be nice. But if we find through our discussion that we need to go back to the drawing board on this, we could probably go into July if we absolutely had to. But, there's student handbook implications, there's staff training and PD implications, and 90% of those we're probably good to move forward with regardless of, the language. We know that we have to be ready for AI. And I'll just our approach moving forward is we want to strike a path in integrating AI so that when our students graduate, they're comfortable using the tools, but they also understand how to use the tools responsibly. And this policy, we feel like, provides the protections under which we can work with teachers and students on the appropriate uses of AI.
All right.
Who is considered the AI coordinator? Like, who does that fall under?
Dr. Allen, that was really great of you to raise your hand and volunteer like that. No, Dr. Allen knows that she would be our AI coordinator. And I would this isn't what the parallel I should draw, but I'm going to compare it to our bullying policy, because you have a district bullying coordinator, but the district bullying coordinator doesn't directly investigate every incident. But our AI coordinator would work with building administration to investigate any allegations of AI. And in time, the administration gets really good at knowing what's crossed the line and what hasn't, and Dr. Allen's role would evolve in that as well.
And just as I'm looking through this, the cross references, so as far as disciplinary action, for students, it falls back to our current discipline policy. There'd be no differential things happening for, I guess.
Like plagiarism or?
Correct.
Dr. Allen, anything specific on that?
Just, you already approved a board policy change to our academic dishonesty with the handbook, so that's being updated for this year. So we already made that change before this one even came out.
All right.
Do we have an ISO? If you're gonna be the coordinator, who's the ISO?
Mr. Waddy, our Director of Technology.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess my one question, just as an educator, is who will be doing the training for the AI understanding? Because I understand the perspective of a student, but teachers use it for many things to develop different lesson plans, things like that. And so the understanding of how this policy impacts them, in what ways, and who will be doing that training.
So our first training is going to come next week at our admin retreat. First, we're getting educated by Bob Martins coming from Mornet to do a 2-hour training with our admin team. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of handbook policy changes, how this is going to affect syllabi, that sort of thing. And then our admin have already scheduled through calendar invite with Audrey Harrison, who's our instructional technology specialist, and myself. We'll be pushing out into every building to do AI training for staff. It looks a little different K-5, 6-8, and 9-12, so we're going to tweak it a little bit differently for each grade level. And then throughout the course of the summer, we've also got a group that we've engaged to evaluate 2 AI tools. Our thinking is, just making AI open to everyone or closing it down from everyone isn't a great approach. But if we could find one that fits within our technology budget that we really like, it puts some guardrails on it so kids can't search anything they want to search. We can teach them how to use it as an appropriate tool, so it's kind of got those safety measures built in, and we can really build their skills as opposed to just kind of giving free rein. So our hope would be using this group actually throughout the course of the summer to use sort of a rubric and score. We've got a few top favorites right now that we're looking at.
All right. Any additional questions? All right. And do we want to try and bring this back next week or next meeting then?
I would like to bring it back as an action item. if everybody's comfortable with that. I guess even if we do and something happens between now and then, we can table it.
Let's go ahead and bring it back at the board meeting for action.
Thank you.
All right, that will take us to policy JHCD, administration of medications to students. I know we've had this one come up previously as well.
Yes, this might be moving to the top of the list of most frequently amended policies. We now can keep epinephrine and asthma rescue medications without being directly tied to an individual student. So we can keep those products in our health rooms, and then of course only specially trained personnel can administer that if it's an emergency application of the medicine. So that has to be by somebody who knows whether or not that's okay if the prescription's not aligned to the student. So this policy allows us to do that. The last time was for the Narcan. The Narcan was the last time we amended this was to have Narcan in all of our health rooms.
All right. Any questions or discussions on this policy?
I have a question about that just for our family's sake. So I think a lot of people that do require these things, then, I mean, the procedure in the past has been you keep one at school for those situations. Would they still need to do that, or would having these there relieve them of that?
No, they would still have to have theirs there. The preference is that any student who needs epinephrine or asthma inhaler still has those available in the health room. This is in the event of an emergency where one of those two medications could be delivered to a student who
It wasn't already
doesn't have that
prescribed
as a prescription.
Okay.
But the medical professional RNs would know that this was needed.
Gotcha, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions?
Yeah, I do. All right, as the ER ICU nurse, how is the epinephrine, how is it going to be administered? And in terms of the Narcan, is this nasal or is this going to be something that's given IV? Because Narcan's typically IV in the ER, but I want to know how these medications are administered. And the RNs, are they 2-year, 4-year? What's the background on your nurse RNs, your school nurse?
Sure. So the Narcan is the nasal spray that we keep. That is in all of the health rooms. That is the only one that we give. So that answers hopefully that first question. The second one, as far as the epinephrine pins, the EpiPens are the I don't want to say fairly standard, but it's the injectables that are injected into an individual's thigh that would cause, if there was somebody going into anaphylactic shock or whatever, that would be given through the thigh through the injectable. And our district's RNs are 4-year.
Okay, if I could at least put it in discussion just for clarification for non-medical people, I would like to see the naloxone and the epinephrine actually listed as such that it's going to be nasal naloxone, and then it's going to be an EpiPen in terms of, just for clarification for everybody that they understand what it is, since it's an IM injection for the epinephrine. If that is something that's doable, because that would be my first question, would be for purposes of, especially for insurance, I would like to know that because I can read this multiple different ways, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be something that we could add to the policy, just put that additional language in there, and then that could be added and then brought back to the board.
We'll bring it back for discussion next time with the revisions.
Also, I'd like to want for trained employees, what are we using for training? Because with RN, BLS, ACLS, trained employees, like what is the training background of everybody that could administer?
Specifically, I'd have to check with our district RNs for that specific. I know that the individuals that work in our health rooms as well as coaches, they are all trained on the injectable epinephrine pen. with the dummy pins or the trainers. So those are given. There is training that is given to all of those individuals with that device, but to be specific with the type of individual certification that you just referenced, I'm not 100% sure. I could follow up with our district's director of health services and find out.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be necessarily in the policy. I'm just curious for my own
Sure,
understanding.
no problem.
Okay. Dr. Welly has noted that, and we will get that information gathered up. Any other questions? All right. That will move us to executive session. I would look for a motion to adjourn to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Do I need to read the numbers?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Let me read you the motion. We're going to redo that. Sorry. I would look for a motion to adjourn to go into executive session under 610.022 subsection 610.021 1, 3, and 13.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We will do one more roll call vote. Ms. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. English,
Yes.
Dr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Pollard,
Yes.
Mr. Scully,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That'll move us to executive session and adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much for coming.